My parents scoffed. "You'll never match your brother." I rose and said, "Then he can cover the bills." "I'm done sending money." My mom froze. "What money? We never got a cent from you." Can you imagine being told you're nothing, that your entire life's effort means absolutely nothing, while someone else gets all the credit for your sacrifices? What if that someone was your own brother, and the credit was for money you secretly sent to your struggling parents? That's exactly what happened to me, and the truth exploded at my mother's birthday party in a way that left everyone absolutely speechless. It was a moment of shocking betrayal, but also, finally, a moment of raw, undeniable truth. My name is Alvin Grant, and I grew up in Beckley, West Virginia, a small town where everyone knew everyone and family stories were shared over simple dinners. But my childhood? It wasn't that warm, cozy picture. For me, it was a long, aching series of days spent constantly in the shadow of unfair comparisons. I was always the one falling short, always the quiet one, while my younger brother, Chase, was the shining star, the golden child no one could rival. From the moment he was born, Chase, for years my junior, had this strange charisma. He was lively, eloquent, and just knew how to charm adults with his radiant smiles and perfectly timed jokes. Our parents, Monica and Gordon Grant, and all our relatives, adored him like a treasure. At every single gathering, all eyes were on Chase, hanging on his every word. I just sat there quietly, waiting for a question, a kind word, anything. It rarely came. My dad, a coal miner, toiled in those dark, grimy tunnels, coming home with a face smeared with dust and hands calloused from hard labor. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, it was almost always to praise Chase. Mom, an accountant, was constantly busy with ledgers, yet she always found time to brag to neighbors about her clever son. I know they didn't mean to hurt me, but their favoritism piled up over time, just like the layers of coal dust clinging to Dad's skin. They always had reasons for overlooking me. I was quiet, reserved, not great at small talk, often fumbling conversations while Chase could make a room burst into laughter with a single joke. My grades were decent, but I never won big awards. Chase, though? He was constantly praised for everything from youth soccer to school plays, anything that made him stand out. Me, I loved reading science fiction, tinkering with an old second-hand computer Dad bought, taking it apart to see how it worked. But to them, that was just burying my nose in dry books or messing with computers, as if my interests were a flaw to be fixed. Those constant comparisons became a smoldering wound in my heart. It didn't bleed, but it ached every single night. "You need to learn from your brother," Dad would say after glancing at my perfectly good report card, as if my study grades were utterly insignificant compared to Chase's latest praise. I felt like a shadow, just a faint silhouette no one truly noticed or needed. I didn't resent Chase. He was my little brother, and I loved him, truly. But each comparison pushed me further inward, building an invisible wall around my fragile heart. One Christmas afternoon, it all crystallized for me. Chase sang Jingle Bells and earned a round of applause. I sat there, holding a homemade LED lamp I'd built from spare parts, hoping my parents would like it. When I presented it, Mom barely glanced, then said, "You should spend more time playing with your brother instead of messing with these useless things." I just nodded, swallowed my tears, and retreated to my room. Lying there in the dark, I wondered, would I ever be good enough? Would I always be just a shadow? My childhood passed in moments like these, teaching me that family love can be terribly unfair, and invisible wounds cut deeper than any blade. I found solace in books and technology, places where no one compared me to anyone else. But deep down, I still longed for the day my parents would truly see me, not as Chase's shadow, but as Alvin, a person with my own worth, quiet and different though I might be. When I entered my teenage years, I desperately hoped things would change, that I'd find my own corner of the sky. But no, Chase's shadow loomed even larger, darker, and high school only deepened that feeling of being invisible. At Beckley High, I was still the quiet, reserved Alvin, with hardly any close friends. The noisy hallways, the laughing groups, the school dances, they all felt alien. I preferred the library, flipping through electronics books, or the computer lab, typing my first lines of code. I found joy in unraveling circuits or writing small programs, but that joy was mine alone. My classmates saw me as that weird kid, my teachers as good but unremarkable. Chase? He was a pop star among the students. He played basketball, emceed school events, and knew how to make everyone laugh. Teachers loved him, not just for his energy, but his knack for charming adults. Once, I overheard my homeroom teacher telling Mom during a conference, "Chase is truly an outstanding student, always full of energy." Mom beamed. As for me, Alvin does fine, but he needs to be more outgoing. I sat in the corner, listening to my mom agree, and it felt like another pebble dropped into my chest. At home, the comparisons continued, sharper than ever. "Look at your brother," Dad would say, his voice brimming with pride whenever Chase brought home a basketball medal. That kind of energy is what leads to success. "You keep being so quiet. What are you going to achieve?" Mom was gentler, but her words cut deeper. "Alvin, you need to learn how to talk, to connect like your brother. If you're not good with people, it'll be hard to get far in life." I just nodded, never arguing, but each word was a fresh slash to an old wound, making it bleed silently. It's not that I didn't try. I quietly worked hard at school, kept steady grades, and nurtured a secret dream of becoming an engineer. I loved engineering, the logic of circuits, the way code created smoothly functioning systems. In that world, I felt I had worth. I started researching colleges, especially West Virginia University, known for its engineering program. I dreamed of creating something of my own, proving I didn't need to be like Chase to succeed. But I kept it to myself. Whenever I mentioned engineering, Mom would shake her head. "What good will those machines do? You should learn to communicate like your brother." Once, I tried to change. I joined the school science club. We built a small model rocket, and our group was chosen to present it. I prepared nervously, thinking this time my parents would see me differently. But on the day of the event, Chase had an important basketball game. Both my parents went to cheer for him. I stood on stage, presenting our rocket, glancing at the audience and seeing their seats empty. Later, Mom just said, "I was busy watching your brother's game. Next time, let me know in advance." I nodded, but deep down, I knew there wouldn't be a next time. When I got that acceptance letter from West Virginia University for electrical engineering, it felt like a ray of light piercing through a long, dark tunnel. Standing at the university gates, gazing at the lecture halls and modern labs, I told myself, this is where I belong. College wasn't just a chance to learn. It was a chance to shape who I was, to step out of Chase's shadow, to prove I had value, even if in a different way. My early days in Morgantown were like a parched man finding a stream. I dove into my studies, relishing time in the lab, tinkering with complex circuits, writing lines of code. Every time a program executed successfully, with "Hello World" flashing on screen, my heart raced. I didn't need an audience, just the knowledge that I was inching closer to my dream. While I buried myself in assignments and part-time jobs to cover tuition, Chase took a completely different path. He dropped out of college after just 1 year, declaring school was restrictive for someone like him. Instead, he threw himself into vague freelance ventures that sounded grandiose. He frequently called home, regaling our parents with tales of investment ideas, high-level connections with city entrepreneurs, or life-changing plans. When he visited, Chase appeared like a star, dressed in crisp new shirts, sporting the latest phone, spinning stories about big contracts he was about to sign. I looked at him, wondering where the money came from when he didn't have a steady job. Our parents, as if following a familiar script, continued to favor Chase. They admired him, calling him a go-getter, a visionary. "Chase dares to step out and take risks," Dad said, his voice brimming with pride, while I sat quietly, clutching my glass of water. "But you, Alvin, just working a regular job? What's that going to get you? You need to learn from your brother and dream big." Those words were like salt rubbed into an old wound, making it bleed silently. I wanted to scream that I was working hard, that every month I scrimped and saved for tuition, rent, and expensive textbooks. But I stayed silent, knowing speaking up wouldn't change anything. What hurt most was how they supported Chase without a thought for my struggles. To start his ventures, Chase frequently asked them for money, sometimes for a promising tech app, other times to wine and dine business partners. My parents didn't hesitate to dip into their savings, even take out loans, to give it to him. Chase needs this opportunity to rise, Mom said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Meanwhile, I had to fend for myself. Tuition, rent, food, books, everything depended on grueling part-time jobs. I waited tables, washed dishes, occasionally fixed computers for dorm mates. Once, I hesitantly called Mom, asking for a small amount for a required technical book. She sighed. "Things are tight, Alvin. I just sent money to Chase for his business. You'll have to manage." I hung up, sat in my rented room, stared at my stack of secondhand books, and told myself I had to try harder. My college years felt like living as a machine, racing between studying, working, and chasing my engineering dreams. I maintained high grades, earned an internship at a small tech company in Morgantown, working alongside real engineers. Excited, I shared the news with my parents. I hoped they'd be proud. But Mom only mumbled, "That's good, Alvin. Keep being independent." I stopped sharing after that. Chase, meanwhile, kept showing off on social media, photos next to sleek cars, checking into upscale bars, flaunting expensive watches with confident captions like, "The road to success is never easy." I looked at those posts, wondering where the money came from when our parents, who'd saved their whole lives, were struggling to support him. Every time I called home, Mom would gush about his grand plans, while I got perfunctory questions. "How's school? Doing okay?" I answered briefly, knowing they didn't truly care. I still loved my family, but being overlooked pushed me further away. I told myself I'd prove my worth not through boasts, but through what I achieved. I wanted to become a skilled engineer, build a stable life, not to outshine Chase, but to be myself. Alvin, a person with his own value, quiet and different, though I may be. After 4 grueling years, I graduated from WVU with an electrical engineering degree and a job offer from a tech company in Austin, Texas. Holding that offer letter, I felt like the entire world was opening up. Austin was vibrant, a far cry from Beckley's quiet stillness. My new job as a software engineer let me work on exciting projects with passionate colleagues. My income was decent, enough to live comfortably, but I chose to live frugally. I rented a small apartment, ate simple meals, and put most of my salary towards student loans. I didn't need fancy cars or expensive clothes, things Chase always flaunted. Stability was the most precious thing, something I'd earned through exhausting shifts and sleepless nights. I wanted to build a solid life, not just for myself, but so that one day, my parents might look at me with pride. Then, a phone call from Mom changed everything. Dad, after years in the coal mines, had to retire early due to declining health. Years of coal dust had taken a toll on his lungs. Mom, accustomed to her accounting job, switched to part-time due to age and stress. Our family's income plummeted. Hearing Mom's voice, filled with worry about utility bills and Dad's medication, made my heart ache. I decided right then to send money each month. It wasn't an easy decision. Austin wasn't cheap. But I couldn't stand by and watch them struggle. Every month, I set aside $2,500 to help them. I wanted to do this discreetly, without making them feel like I was showing off. There was one problem. My parents, especially Mom, weren't savvy with bank transfers. They were used to cash. Every time I mentioned banking apps, Mom complained, "It's too complicated." I thought of Chase, who still lived in Beckley, close to them. I called him, proposing what I thought was a convenient solution. I'd transfer the money to his account, and he'd withdraw it in cash to hand directly to our parents. "It's quick and simple," I said. Chase agreed immediately, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "Don't worry, big bro. I'll take care of it." I trusted Chase. Despite his flashy lifestyle, I still saw him as my little brother, someone who wouldn't harm our family. Every month, I diligently transferred the money, including a note in the transaction description, for parents. I didn't check up on it or ask mom if she'd received it because I assumed it was a given. I just wanted them to live more comfortably, and I wanted to do it quietly, without anyone knowing I was behind it. I told myself that even if my parents never acknowledged my efforts, at least I was fulfilling my duty as a son. In Austin, my life was gradually falling into place. My job as a software engineer brought me genuine joy. I loved mornings in the office, sipping black coffee, coding by the window with a view of the bustling streets. But even though I was far from home, my responsibility toward my parents remained an inseparable part of me. After deciding to send $2,500 each month through Chase's account, I continued my work in Austin, convinced I was doing the right thing quietly. I imagined mom using that money for dad's medicine, fixing the leaking roof, or simply living more comfortably. I didn't call to check because I trusted Chase. That trust, looking back now, was perhaps my biggest mistake. Occasionally, I'd call home and hear mom complain. "Your dad's medicine is so expensive." "Alvin," she'd say, her voice thick with worry. "The roof is leaking again. It cost $1,000 to fix." In those moments, my heart tightened. I increased the amount I sent, sometimes $2,700, sometimes $3,000. It meant cutting back even more in Austin, eating out less, skipping outings with colleagues. I didn't complain, thinking I was doing the right thing. I just wanted my parents to live comfortably, free from the worries that had defined their lives. But while I lived frugally, Chase was becoming increasingly extravagant. Through social media, I saw him showing off a new car, a shiny SUV, a designer watch glinting on his wrist, photos taken at upscale bars. He posted statuses brimming with confidence. Big work, big life. I looked at those posts and wondered where the money was coming from, since he was still freelancing with projects that were never quite clear. But I brushed aside my doubts, telling myself maybe he had finally succeeded, that his investments had paid off. I didn't want to think ill of my brother, even though sometimes a small voice in my head warned me something wasn't right. Amid my busy days in Austin, Pamela entered my life like a ray of warm sunshine. She worked in our company's marketing department with a radiant smile and eyes that truly listened. We started with short conversations during lunch, where I awkwardly talked about a stubborn coding bug, and she shared details about a new ad campaign. Gradually, after-work coffee dates brought us closer. Pamela wasn't just a girlfriend, she was my first true confidant. She helped me forget the grueling workdays, the sleepless nights worrying about money, and the lingering sadness of being compared to Chase. One evening, as we sat on a park bench under the soft glow of streetlights, I told her about my childhood in Beckley, about living in Chase's shadow, and about sending money to my parents through him. Pamela listened without judgment. Then she took my hand and said, "Alvin, you're doing a great thing taking care of your parents, but you need to be more transparent. Let them know you're the one sending the money so they can see your heart." I smiled and brushed it off. "No need for that. I just want things to be simple, discreet." Pamela shook her head, her eyes filled with concern. "You trust Chase too much. Be careful. Not everyone is as they seem." Our dates became a healing balm. She took me to live music shows, taught me how to dance despite my clumsiness, cooked simple dinners with me. One time, when I was exhausted from a project, Pamela showed up with homemade cookies, and we sat watching a comedy, laughing until our sides hurt. "You don't need to be like anyone else," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. "You're Alvin, and that's enough." Those moments made me feel lighter, as if Chase's shadow was slowly fading, replaced by the warmth of Pamela's love. But her advice about transparency lingered. I didn't want to believe Chase could do anything wrong, but his flashy posts, the new car, the lavish parties, they began to stir a vague unease. I didn't know then that this feeling was leading me toward a painful truth. A truth that would explode at my mother's birthday party, shattering my trust and turning everything I thought I knew about my family upside down. My mother's 65th birthday party was the first time I'd returned to Beckley after almost a year. I wanted to do something truly special. I spent weeks preparing a gift, a compact digital camera, easy to use, perfect for Mom, who'd once mentioned wanting to capture family moments and the daisies in her garden. I tested models. Pamela helped me check features. Your mom's going to adore this, she said, her eyes sparkling as we wrapped it in green, Mom's favorite color, and wrote a card. Happy birthday, Mom, from Alvin and Pamela. Pamela agreed to come, not just for the party, but to meet my family. I was more nervous than ever. This was my first girlfriend I'd brought home, and I wanted my family to see me differently, a mature Alvin with a stable job, a respectable life, and a wonderful partner. On the flight from Austin, Pamela held my hand. Don't worry, she whispered. Everything will be fine. I smiled, but my heart felt heavy. I'd told her about my childhood, Chase's shadow, the constant comparisons. But I still hoped this party would be a chance to mend things, for my parents to finally see me without comparing me to him. The drive to Beckley took us through familiar roads. Our old family home came into view, chipped porch, weathered roof, Mom's small garden blooming yellow daisies. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of damp grass, the smell of home. Pamela smiled, pulling her suitcase, looking completely at ease. I hugged Mom, noticing she was thinner, her hair streaked with more silver. Dad sat in his armchair, coughing, his face pale, but he managed to smile. I introduced Pamela. Mom hugged her. Come in. Don't be shy. Pamela responded warmly, thank you. I've heard so much about you from Alvin. Chase appeared shortly after, stepping out of the kitchen in a sharp navy suit, white shirt, and gleaming watch. He clapped me on the shoulder, laughing loudly. You're back, huh? Still the tech guy, never changed. I smiled back, trying not to notice Mom's glance, which briefly passed over me before settling on Chase, as if comparing us. Pamela whispered, your brother sure knows how to steal the spotlight. I just nodded. The party unfolded in the living room, decorated with gold tinsel and balloons. The dining table was laden with cake, homemade cookies, and a vase of daisies Mom had picked. Relatives buzzed with laughter and chatter. Aunt Linda, who always fawned over Chase, Uncle Frank, who loved telling old stories, a few close neighbors. Pamela blended in quickly, chatting cheerfully with Aunt Linda about her marketing job in Austin, about designing ad campaigns. I watched her, feeling a mix of pride and unease. I wanted my family to see Pamela not just as my girlfriend, but as someone who understood me, who made me feel valued. But then, like a familiar script, the conversation turned to Chase. Aunt Linda, mid-sip of tea, turned to him, her voice full of admiration. Chase, you're such a beautiful son. Sending money to your parents every month, regular as clockwork. This family is lucky to have you. Others nodded, chiming in, exactly. That boy knows how to take care of his family. Not like some who only live for themselves. My heart tightened. Pamela squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes silently saying, don't let it get to you. But Mom, as if to pour fuel on the fire, looked at me with reproachful eyes. Alvin, why can't you be even a fraction like Chase? You should learn from him. Chase is taking care of this whole family. You know that. Her words, sharp as a knife, cut deep into wounds I'd tried to bury for years. Pamela gripped my hand tighter, whispering, stay calm, Alvin. Don't let them hurt you. But I couldn't stay calm anymore. Years of holding back, years of comparisons, years of quietly sending money without recognition, it all erupted inside me like an uncontrollable fire. I stood up abruptly, the wooden chair scraping loudly, startling everyone. My voice trembled but was resolute. If that's the case, from now on, let Chase handle all the bills. I'll stop sending money. The room fell silent as if the air had been sucked out. My parents' eyes widened in shock. Dad, his voice weak from illness, spoke up. What money? We've never received anything from you. Mom nodded, her tone sharp. Alvin, don't talk nonsense. You're off working far away, never bothering about us. When have you ever sent money? I felt the blood rush to my head, a mix of pain and white-hot anger. Pamela looked at me, worried but supportive. I took a deep breath, pulled my phone from my pocket, and opened the banking app. My fingers scrolled through the transaction history. Each line, clear as day, $2,500 every month. Sometimes $2,700, sometimes $3,000. all transferred to Chase's account with the note, "For parents." I held the screen up for everyone to see, my voice calm but icy. "Here, for the past 2 years, every month I've sent money to Chase to give to you. You say I don't care? Then what's this?" The room went dead silent. Mom's mouth fell open, her hands trembling as if she wanted to touch the screen. Dad sat up straighter, his eyes wide, his voice a whisper. "Alvin, is this true?" Relatives began murmuring, their admiring glances at Chase turning to suspicion. Aunt Linda muttered, "My God, what's going on?" Uncle Frank, usually quiet, turned to Chase, his tone stern. "Chase, what's this about?" Pamela, unable to stay silent, stood up, her voice soft but clear. "Alvin has worked so hard to take care of this family. He didn't want to boast, but I think everyone needs to know the truth. He sent money every month, even though he had to live frugally in Austin, working day and night to earn it. I don't understand why there's been such a misunderstanding." She looked at me, her eyes giving me strength, but also filled with concern. "You're not wrong, Alvin. They need to know the truth, no matter how painful it is." The small living room, once filled with laughter and childhood memories, now felt like a tense stage for a dramatic play. The light from the ceiling bulb cast long shadows on the stunned faces. The gold tinsel and balloons decorating Mom's birthday seemed horribly out of place. Mom sat there, her hands trembling, her eyes glued to my phone screen, where the bank statements lay bare. Dad, despite his frail health, sat up straight, eyes wide as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Relatives whispered, their gazes darting between me and Chase, trying to process the enormity of what had just unfolded. Mom was the first to break the silence, her voice trembling, almost breaking. "Chase, you told me that money was from you. You said you were providing for us." She looked at Chase, her eyes filled with both pain and shock, as if a part of the world she had believed in had just crumbled. Chase bowed his head, his face flushed, his hands clenched into fists. He said nothing, sitting there like a child caught doing something terribly wrong. I stood watching, my heart pounding, not out of anger now, but from a deeper pain, the pain of realizing that my younger brother, whom I had trusted completely, had utterly betrayed that trust. Pamela looked at my mom, her eyes sincere yet serious. "Alvin loves this family, and he doesn't deserve to be misunderstood like this." Her words were like a cool breeze, soothing the storm of emotions raging inside me. Dad, his voice still weak, looked at Chase and demanded, "Speak, Chase. What's the deal with that money? What did you do with what your brother sent?" His tone wasn't angry, but carried a deep disappointment, as if he had just lost something precious. Chase lifted his head, his eyes darting away, then stammered, I didn't mean to, Dad. I just borrowed it for a bit. I was going to pay it back later." He took a deep breath and finally, unable to bear the weight of all those stares, he confessed, "I kept most of the money. I only gave you and Mom a little, a few $100s a month. So you'd think I was taking care of the family. I needed the money to pay off debts, to keep up appearances. I didn't want you to be disappointed in me." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a heavier silence, thick with shattered trust. All those months I had scrimped and saved, lived frugally, worked overtime to send money home for my parents. It had all been a tool for Chase to maintain his image as the beautiful son. I looked at him, searching for a trace of the little brother who used to chase me around the backyard to play ball, who shared Mom's cookies with me. But before me now was a young man, his face flushed with shame, his eyes avoiding mine. Pamela, standing beside me, spoke gently to the room. "Alvin didn't want to make a big deal out of this. He just wanted his parents to live well, without worries. But I think from now on, things need to be clearer. Alvin deserves to be recognized, not for the money, but for his heart." She turned to me, her eyes soft. "You make me proud, Alvin. I know you didn't want to boast, but today, you needed to speak up to protect yourself." Her words were like a cool breeze, easing the storm within me, but they also reminded me that if I had listened to her advice from the start, things might not have gone this far. Chase, after a long silence, finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Alvin, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I got caught up in debt. My projects, They weren't like I said. I lost money, racked up debts, and I needed the money to keep up appearances so Mom and Dad wouldn't be disappointed. He bowed his head, his voice choking. I was wrong. I didn't think things would go this far. His confession left me with a mix of anger and pity. Angry because he had lied and used me, but pitying because he was my brother, and I knew he was also a victim of the unrealistic expectations he had placed on himself. The truth about Chase slowly came to light. The grand projects he boasted about, the SUV, the designer watch, the lavish parties, all funded by loans, debts, and worse, the money I had sent for our parents. He had used most of it to sustain his flashy lifestyle, giving our parents only a few $100s a month, just enough for them to think he was the dutiful son. I looked at him, my heart torn between pain and disappointment. But more than anything, I realized that the distance between us wasn't just a matter of personality. It was a matter of honesty. Mom covered her face, sobbing. She grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. Alvin, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you did so much. I was wrong all these years. Dad, his voice thick with regret, looked at me. I was wrong, Alvin. I always thought you didn't care about the family, that Chase was the one looking out for us. I never imagined you. He trailed off, unable to find the words. I saw his eyes red, and for the first time in my life, I felt he truly saw me, not as Chase's shadow, but as his son. The relatives in the room, from Aunt Linda to Uncle Frank, began to murmur. Aunt Linda, who had always praised Chase, quietly set her teacup down, her eyes full of confusion. Uncle Frank looked at me, his voice low. Alvin, I had no idea you were quietly doing so much. I always thought. He didn't finish, but his eyes for the first time held a respect I had never seen before. A neighbor whispered, turns out Alvin's the one carrying the family. Who would have thought? I looked at everyone, my heart torn between pain and relief. The truth was out, but it didn't bring the joy I had expected. I only wanted my parents to live well, free from worries. But now I realized that my trust had been betrayed, and my family had been clouded by lies and favoritism. Chase looked up, his eyes full of remorse. Alvin, I'll pay the money back. I promise. I'll make it right. But I didn't know if that promise was trustworthy. All I knew was that from this moment, everything in our family had changed forever. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. Mom, Dad, I began, my gaze sweeping across the room. I didn't want things to come to this. All I ever wanted was for you to live well without worries. But what just happened? It's made me rethink everything. I can't continue like before. Mom looked at me, her eyes still brimming with tears, as if she wanted to say something. But I raised my hand to stop her. I needed to say everything, to set boundaries I had never dared to consider before. If you want me to keep supporting you, I said, my voice slow but resolute, I have some conditions. First, I don't want to hear any more comparisons between me and Chase. I've lived my whole life in his shadow, and I'm tired of it. I'm Alvin, not some lesser version of Chase. I looked at Mom, then Dad, my eyes not angry, but firm. Second, from now on, every expense needs to be transparent. I'll send money directly to you, or I'll pay the bills myself. I need to know my money is being used for its intended purpose. And third, Chase needs to contribute too. If he wants to be part of this family, he needs to take responsibility, not just make empty promises. The room fell silent. Mom nodded slowly, tears still streaming down her cheeks. Alvin, I agree, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I was wrong to compare you to your brother. I promise I won't do it again. I just wanted our family to be harmonious, but I made so many mistakes. Dad spoke up too. I agree, Alvin. You're right. From now on, everything will be transparent. We won't let this happen again. Chase, still bowing his head, finally looked up. His face was flushed, his eyes full of shame, but also a glimmer of determination. Alvin, he said, his voice trembling. I know I was wrong. I'm not just apologizing. I'll try to make things right. I'll contribute. I'll help Mom and Dad, and I'll live more responsibly. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for a chance. I don't want to lose this family, and I don't want you to think badly of me forever. His words, though I wasn't entirely sure I could trust them, softened my heart. Pamela, sitting beside me, gave a faint smile and whispered, "You did well, Alvin. Setting boundaries is necessary, and I believe your family will understand." She turned to Mom, her voice gentle. "Ma'am, I know this is hard, but Alvin just wants fairness and transparency in the family. He loves you and your husband so much." Mom nodded, grasping Pamela's hand, smiling as if she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. What was supposed to be a joyful occasion had become a turning point for our family. Mom, after wiping her tears, stood up and hugged me tightly. "My son, I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll never forget what you've done." Dad, unable to stand, grasped my hand, his eyes full of gratitude. I felt a small spark of warmth in my heart. Not because of the recognition, but because for the first time, I felt my family's love, unclouded by comparisons. The birthday party ended quietly, with no one in the mood to cut the cake or raise glasses. Relatives left one by one, whispers about Chase and the truth that had just been revealed lingering in the air. Pamela held my hand, her eyes a steady anchor amidst the storm of emotions. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I nodded, but inside I knew I needed time to process everything. The truth had been laid bare, leaving me with mixed feelings, relief that I was finally seen, but pain that my trust in Chase had been shattered. I looked at Mom, Dad, and Chase, my family, the people I loved, and wondered if we could heal these cracks. In the months that followed, I returned to Austin and continued my work as a software engineer, but with a new resolve. I would care for my parents, but on my own terms, with clear boundaries. I opened a joint bank account with Mom, teaching her how to check the balance through an app, though she still complained it was too complicated. I sent money directly to that account, $2,500 each month, sometimes adding more when Mom mentioned unexpected expenses. But this time, I ensured everything was transparent. I sent Mom copies of receipts, called to confirm she received the money, and asked for her verification. "I don't want the past to repeat itself," I told her over the phone, my voice gentle but firm. Mom nodded through the video call, her eyes full of gratitude. "I understand, Alvin. I won't let it happen again." As they promised, Mom and Dad began to change. They stopped comparing me to Chase, no longer mentioning the clever younger brother or the pride of the family. Instead, Mom called regularly, asking about my work in Austin, about the projects I was working on. "Being an engineer must be tough, right?" she asked, her voice curious. For the first time, I felt she was genuinely interested in my world, the world of code and circuits. Dad, despite his failing health, started telling neighbors about Alvin, the engineer in the big city. Once he called me, his voice hoarse but warm. "I'm proud of you, Alvin." I was wrong not to see it sooner. Those simple, heartfelt words were like a balm, healing the scars in my heart. Chase, after the incident at the party, struggled to pick himself up. He admitted that his grand projects were nothing but failed gambles. He owed money to banks, friends, even loan sharks. "Alvin, I tried so hard to succeed, to make Mom and Dad proud," he said over the phone, his voice full of regret, "but I went down the wrong path." I didn't know how to comfort him, but I advised him to find a stable job and start over. Chase nodded, and for the first time, I saw him take his promise seriously. He found work at an auto repair shop in Beckley, a modest salary, but enough to cover his expenses and contribute a small amount to our parents. Each month, he sent $300 home. Not much, but it was his first real effort to live responsibly. Mom told me Chase started spending more time at home, helping Dad fix the fence or taking her to the market. "He's trying, Alvin," she said softly. I know he was wrong, but I believe he'll change. I felt relieved, not just because of Chase's changes, but because I had finally stepped out from the shadow of comparison that had weighed on me for years. I no longer felt the need to compete with him or prove my worth. I was Alvin, a software engineer, a son, a man living true to his values. My work in Austin thrived. I was promoted to project team leader, guiding a group of young engineers. Pamela was always by my side, supporting me through busy days and nights when I worried about my family. She became an indispensable part of my life, not just a confidant, but a reminder that I deserved to be loved and respected. A year after that fateful birthday party, Pamela and I decided to get married. We chose a small church on the outskirts of Austin, with a cozy atmosphere, soft light streaming through stained glass onto rustic wooden pews. Pamela, with her refined sense of style, insisted on adding white daisies reminiscent of Mom's garden and an acoustic band playing gentle love songs. I wanted a simple wedding, but Pamela turned it into an emotional, unforgettable day with small details that kept me smiling: handwritten cards for guests, a small dessert table with homemade cookies, a photo booth with a wooden frame engraved with our names. "This is our day, Alvin," she said, her eyes sparkling. "But it's also a day for your family to see how happy you are." Chase attended, dressed more simply than before, no longer sporting designer watches or flashy suits. He hugged me, saying, "Congratulations, Alvin. I'm trying to be a better person." I nodded, not bringing up the past, but in my heart, I hoped he would keep his word. The wedding was filled with joy, free from favoritism or comparisons. Relatives from Beckley, including Aunt Linda and Uncle Frank, were there, and this time they spoke of me with genuine respect. "Alvin's truly a wonderful son," Aunt Linda said, her eyes no longer fixed on Chase as they once were. I smiled, feeling the fairness I had waited for my whole life. When Pamela walked in wearing her white wedding dress, my heart seemed to stop. She looked like a dream, her hair cascading softly, her eyes shining under the church's light. The band played a gentle acoustic melody, and as she approached, taking my hand, I knew this wasn't just a new beginning for me, but for our family. The ceremony was filled with joy, free from favoritism or comparisons, only love and reunion. As we exchanged vows, I looked into Pamela's eyes and said, "I promise to love and cherish you the way you helped me find myself again." Pamela smiled, her voice choked with emotion, "And I promise to always stand by you, Alvin, no matter what happens." We exchanged rings, and when I kissed her, applause erupted. I looked at my parents, Mom wiping tears, Dad smiling, and Chase standing in the corner, giving a slight nod as if in support. My family, once divided by favoritism and lies, was slowly finding its way to love, fairness, and clarity. Years later, Pamela and I built a life full of joy. We bought a small house in Austin with a little garden where Pamela planted daisies, just like Mom's in Beckley. I continued my work at the tech company, and Pamela started a small marketing consultancy, where she shone with creativity and passion. We often visited my parents, bringing small gifts, a new camera for Mom, a comfortable armchair for Dad. My parents now greeted us with smiles and stories no longer centered on Chase. They talked about Mom's garden, Dad's health, and asked about our life in Austin. "As long as you're happy, I'm happy," Mom said, her eyes free of any trace of favoritism. Chase, after years of struggle, finally found his path. He paid off his debts through his steady job at the auto repair shop and later opened a small garage in Beckley. His business did well, not the grand projects he once boasted about, but enough for him to take pride in his achievements. He continued sending $300 a month to our parents, sometimes adding more when he could. He began making up for past mistakes, not just with money, but with actions, fixing the roof for our parents, taking Dad to doctor's appointments, or simply sharing dinner with them. Once he called me, his voice sincere. "Alvin, I know I messed up, but I'm trying to be someone you can be proud of." I smiled over the phone. "Keep trying, Chase. I believe in you." And for the first time, I truly believed he could do it. Our lives as brothers, once divided by favoritism and lies, had found a balance. I no longer lived in Chase's shadow, and he no longer chased unrealistic expectations. Our family, though not perfect, had learned to love each other fairly and transparently. Looking back on my journey from the quiet boy in Beckley to the happy man beside Pamela, I realized that family bonds are only truly strong when built on transparency and fairness. Love without fairness ceases to be a refuge and becomes a wound that's hard to heal. Only when each person is valued for who they are can a family endure as a place to return to, rather than a shadow that binds a life. Honestly, this whole experience taught me so much about confronting difficult truths, even within your own family. It was incredibly painful, but ultimately, it brought a kind of peace I never thought possible. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a situation like this, especially against family? What did you do? How did it turn out? I'd really love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.